All right, a very good morning to you and welcome to Eagles 102.3 FM's Eagles Morning Rises Breakfast Show. And yes, this is that segment where we talk politics and current affairs. We are going to be talking about something that borders around the Commonwealth of the African continent. Now, we're talking about West Africa's instability and insecurity, economic and humanitarian challenges. Right now, we have our guest who is in the studio, and he is in the person of Dr. Kingsley Uzoma, Security and Public Affairs Analyst and Chief Consultant at Eagle Rescue and Alarm Systems Limited. Welcome aboard, Doctor.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What a coincidence. Eagles FM and then Eagles Rescue and Alarm Systems Limited.
That's right.
All right, maybe we should have a collaboration, Doctor, maybe after the show. We'll see how we can collaborate. My name is Edward Daniel, and I'm not alone in the studio as I got the Adaize one of Eagles FM right here.
Right. My name is Omoife Piso Senator. It feels good to be in the studios this morning to look at, very topical issues bordering West Africa. All right. Looking at the instability, insecurity, all of these and more are things that some people, observers, have actually tagged the bane of, West Africa's development. There has been some sort of unprecedented hardship, not just in Nigeria, but across West African, states or countries. So let's see how we can really analyze or assess these issues and also, chart the way forward.
Well, Doctor, you would recall that in recent times, the economic community of West African states, as ECOWAS, the MPs have expressed concerns about the impact of unstable policies and insecurity on job creation and even economic development in West Africa. Now, the region's instability is attributed, to various factors. One of such is the poor governance. Another would be corruption. Another is insecurity. And all of these have resulted in significant economic losses and human suffering. I mean, West Africa, for one, is facing, significant unemployment challenges, particularly among youth. I mean, we've seen the lack of job, opportunities, the high unemployment rates in the region. I mean, all of these are major concerns. Insecurity and unstable policies, they've all resulted in substantial economic losses, especially affecting businesses and individuals alike. I mean, we might want to take an example. Somebody sent us an example, and we'd like to, take that example. Then we get your thoughts on it. I mean, a young entrepreneur, her name is Amira, right? Now, she had, closed business due to insecurity and instability in the region and all of that. And this is highlighting human cost of the issue, right? Now, this background supposedly should set a stage for understanding the complexities of these challenges faced by West Africa. How can West African governments prioritize stability and security, especially in view of attracting investment, the FDIs, foreign direct investment, as well as create jobs?
Well, for me, you have to understand the fact that ECOWAS is a multilateral pact.
Okay.
Between the member states, and the member states are made up of former colony of the British and the French. So you still have this rivalry of the Francophone and Anglophone.
Right.
Okay. In the sense that for Nigeria, English is our official language.
Yeah.
Same goes to Ghana, and then from Benin Republic, Togo, and a good number of others. They are Francophone. So you see that for us, Nigeria still seems to place allegiance to the British, while the Francophone nations pledge their own to French, that's France. So it affects the activities of ECOWAS. And beyond that, you see, like in Nigeria, we often say that when the head is good or is reasoning fine, every other parts of the body will feel the heat and also reason right. So for ECOWAS, you might ask me, what do I mean by the head? Nigeria is actually the head of ECOWAS with regards to our size in terms of population, economic potentials, and what have you. So if as a nation we are not doing right, in fact the ECOWAS treaty I think was actually signed in Lagos. We call it the Lagos Treaty that established ECOWAS.
Right.
And the same ECOWAS are headquartered here in Abuja. ECOWAS Parliament, ECOWAS headquarters, all that has to do with ECOWAS is here in Nigeria. So we pride ourselves as the big brother of Africa. Then you can also say that we are the mother of ECOWAS. So for ECOWAS to do well, for you to have that real economic integration,
right,
whereby my brothers in Aba can fabricate some quantities of fabrics and what have you, move it freely to Ghana or any of the member states without paying extra tax or charges, without going through extra scrutiny or tariff, is actually the philosophy of ECOWAS. But that is not the case today. Economic integration, or what used to be the case in the past, is that, for instance, you might do importation from the US or any other part of Nigeria, it lands the port of Lagos or Benin Republic. Moving it from port of Lagos or from Lagos, maybe after paying your custom duties in Lagos, you should be able to drive this vehicle freely to Ghana and any other member nation. But that is not the case in real time. There is antagonism and what have you. They want to scrutinize and things like that. But it's also good you compare ECOWAS with other sub-regional bodies within Africa. The East Central Africa that has Kenya, Rwanda, and what have you. I think for the little period I spent there, the thing is that, let's say, like Rwanda is a landlocked nation, so they depend on other neighboring countries for sea freight. Okay, when be it air or sea, when goods is cleared by any of these member nations, you can move it around any of the member states to sell without facing additional custom scrutiny or tariff. The moment you show your papers and it's cleared, nobody disturbs you again.
Right.
So your port of entry could be Tanzania or in Rwanda, but you can go to Kenya and sell your goods with eggs and things like that. So you see that regional integration is there. Okay, but when you narrow it back to ECOWAS, you still see that dichotomy between the Francophone and the Anglophone. It still plays has a very big influence to the vision and mission of ECOWAS.
So, Doctor, why do you think that is? Maybe a very quick one. Why do you think that is? I mean, you mentioned, the other regional blocks, and how they are integrated, and then yet when we come back to West Africa, especially looking into ECOWAS, which, by the way, has changed, its head, right? Mr. President has served 2 terms now. Chairmanship. He has served 2 terms now, and he has handed over to Sierra Leonean President Bio. Why are we having that? Shouldn't we be more integrated, knowing fully well that we are mostly West African and we are mostly colonized by the British at the time?
The bonding or real integration of ECOWAS will take Nigeria to pilot the affairs. I give you instance. You know, the ECOWAS also has its military arm, which is the ECOMOG.
Yeah.
Okay, you see that the ECOMOG, the force behind ECOMOG is actually the same Nigeria because of peace and stability of Nigeria. So Nigeria contributes heavily to the sustenance of ECOWAS as a body. So if Nigeria can get it right in terms of electioneering, leadership, justice and equity internally as a nation, then it can extend it to such regional organization and neighborhood. But wherefore you are still having crisis in Nigeria, insecurity, kidnapping, banditry, and what have you in Nigeria that is considered the head of ECOWAS. You see that a split of it will snowball into other nations, or maybe when you are using the land border, for instance, crossing, maybe you are transiting from Lagos to Accra, Ghana. You see that the way and manner the francophone nations try to ransack you, search or query your passport is different from the way the anglophone will. And the anglophone, you see, maybe when you are in Ghana, you see some level of resemblance in terms of the attitudes of the law enforcement agencies with that of Nigeria. Okay, so, and Nigerians, we tend to feel more relaxed in the anglophone nations than the francophone, due to language similarities or what others might call language barrier. But for ECOWAS to really live up to its existential expectations, it falls back to the leadership of Nigeria. Yes, like you made reference, our own president has just finished his 2-term tenure as the chairman of the regional body, and handed over to another elected person in the person of the president of Sierra Leone. But looking at it, in all honesty, the president of the Sierra Leone cannot stand up and look into the face of the president of Nigeria and say, this is how we should have things done. The fact that you are the president and Nigeria is there, no, you still give reference behind the scenes to Nigeria. This is my plan. What do you think? Like I said earlier, ECOWAS is headquartered here. The bulk funds that sustains ECOWAS is actually from this same Nigeria. And there is one thing with us, Nigeria. We might not do well internally, but we do well outside. Okay. I give you an instance. The same police we castigate here, our security forces, but out there in peace keeping mission, they are judged as one of the best ever. The environment, the terrain, they survive in without complaining.
So we are toxic. We are toxic to ourselves.
Sure. So that's why we have to re-examine ourselves in terms of national consciousness. Okay. That national interest. Are we really, what do we want to make up for Nigeria? Other than these religious differences, inter-ethnic rivalries, and what have you. The moment we have common unity of peoples and go that in the next 5 years, 10 years, this is where we want to be as a nation. You see that as we are moving, ECOWAS is moving. But if we are retrogressing, the same regional body will be retrogressing.
Okay, Dr. Kingsley, thank you so much for that submission. And I think a takeaway from your analysis so far would be the fact that you've been able to give that credit to Nigeria as a leading force behind the ECOWAS, as Absolutely. A regional, bloc or body. However, for the number of states or countries that have decided to have a military takeover, talking about Burkina Faso, Niger Republic, and Mali, right? And there seems to be no going back for these, three military, juntas or hunters, if you like. A major reason that some observers have actually pointed to over time is the level of corruption that has eaten deep into the West African nations. And it appears that we are still finding it difficult really to deal with it. So there is corruption, there is insecurity, and of course unstable government policies. But I'd like you to touch on corruption. How best can that be addressed? Are we also going to be depending on Nigeria to take the lead in the fight against corruption, and how best it can be eradicated from the ECOWAS bloc? Also knowing that ECOWAS actually clocked 50 years, that was early this month, just before our Democracy Day celebrations.
Okay, corruption breeds insecurity, and maybe corruption depends, like some people, some school of thought will say, who is looking at it. What you and I might consider as a corruption, those who are profiting from it doesn't see it as corruption. It's actually a miracle or favor from God,
Okay.
quote and unquote. Then the same corruptions that seems to put us at the retrogressive level, more of like a third world nations, also has powerful nations that are benefiting from it, that are benefiting from members of the ECOWAS nations. I give you an instance. Corruption is the reason in Nigeria as a nation we don't have good healthcare system. A good healthcare system or infrastructure where the president, the governors, or even some local government chairmen, they cannot afford or watch themselves to be treated or attended to medically here in Nigeria. Even if they have emergency and they are to visit any, it has to be more or less a private hospital owned by foreigners, owned by foreign nations. These foreigners are not from Niger, they are not from Chad or Ghana, they are either from the Western world, Europe, or at best India. Okay, but when you say regional integration with regards to ECOWAS, it cuts across healthcare. So even if we seem to have a poor healthcare facility, Ghana should be able to have a good one. Our neighboring countries should be able to, for us to now look back there, instead of faking these funds to France, Germany, and what have you, Ghana should benefit from it. Benin Republic should benefit from it because we are brothers and sisters. We are members of the ECOWAS family. Then wherefore Togo, Mali, and others fail from healthcare to education and what have you, they should look inward in Nigeria for their rescue. Remember, during the apartheid regime, a good number of South Africans schooled here in Nigeria. That was the good old days of Nigeria. Then during the crisis in Liberia, Charles Taylor also was here in Nigeria on exile. And it has to do with plans of action of the government in power. In this democratical dispensation, in terms of corruption, one of the administration we can make good reference to is the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, 1999, first term and second term that ended in 2007. He actually initiated and waged good war against corruption through the establishment of EFCC. At that moment in time, EFCC was known across the globe. EFCC were, to a good extent, to the best of my knowledge, they were living up to their existential establishment. We received good ratings from international communities, upon which our debt with the Paris clubs and others, it was very much more easier to write them off. Okay, and that also snowballs into a touch other aspect of our foreign policy or international inspection, in terms of maybe monetary policy of the central bank and what have you. Say cost of living there was very much to some extent, we are much more comfortable than we are today and things like that. Then that war also against corruption,
indiscipline and corruption.
Indiscipline and corruption.
1970s.
We also noticed it in NAFDAC.
Right.
Okay, that's the that was in charge of food administration, drugs and control, what have you. So during that era, because before then, when Dora Akoyile of blessed memory was made the DG of NAFDAC, we never knew that when people are sick, most of what they were consuming as maybe some pain relief and what have you, we actually fake, check, and stuff like that. There was no control of anything whatsoever. But the nation, through that agency and also having the right person as its head, waged war against that, to the extent that even she fought her own family members who are into fake drugs and what have you.
Okay, so what has changed over time?
Over time, you know, it's just like if you are to quote in Nigeria, we say corruption is fighting back. So after that administration, corruption fought back and seemed to have its way. So now our leaders are now more interested in next election as against the roadmap to development. Nigeria is actually not a baby, 60 years plus. Do you understand? So check a mother or a male species of that age to say you're already a grandmother.
Okay, let me also squeeze in this question, Dr. Kingsley. For countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger that have decided to break away, from the ECOWAS community, do you think that was a step in the right direction, or you would actually call for them to get back on board?
For them, they are sovereign nations. For them, maybe it's a step in the right direction.
No, but I'm sure you've been monitoring the progression of events in these countries.
Yes, in the sense that one, the affected nations or member states are of the Francophone. So their revolt first is against the French, their former colonial masters, okay, before the member states, because they had expected that, given all this their position, that Nigeria should be able, other ECOWAS member states should be able to understand their plight and support them in their new way. But ECOWAS say no, as a regional body, we say no to military junta. Even if this has taken place, you have this time frame to conduct election, embrace a democratical system of government, which we consider that are much more okay for this 21st century as against military junta and what have you.
Right.
So that was where they have disagreements with other member states, that we are a sovereign nation. The fact that ECOWAS economic integration binds us together does not mean that you should actually determine how we conduct our affairs. Like the saying goes, is he that wears the shoe that knows where it pinches? Okay, now for that of Burkina Faso, even if I know that most of what we see online are AI generated, they seems to be okay, much more okay.
So doctor, would you now say that ECOWAS is still relevant based on its formation? Is it living out the dreams for which it has been formed, or it has gone irrelevant? Considering the times, the challenges, what do you think? Is ECOWAS still in it? Or should we begin to look for other medium? Because, the way it seems now, quite a number of family members as well as political observers are saying, hey, it seems as though Africa as a continent, as well as the different regional blocks, which ECOWAS is, one of, they are seemingly servants to the Western world. Whether we say France is is running a kind of system of government where the Francophone, African countries must relinquish the identity their resources to France, then France determines whatever it is that, they are due. Or Britain that says, okay, I will let you handle your resources, so to speak, but then you will still have to come to me as great-grandfather for sustenance, for relevance. So it means you're always dependent on me.
Right.
Can we not have an African continent that is independent of its own? I mean, we have the African Union, we have the ECOWAS, we have the, quite a number of blocks that is supposedly to protect the peoples of Africa. And yet, it does seem as though we are still indebted to our colonial masters. It does seem as though we're still being infiltrated by them. I mean, if you look at the Insecurity Index, we saw the CDS come out boldly to saying that, look, there is external forces. When we say external forces, of course we should know is of international presence. So if you put all of these together, do we still find ECOWAS relevant? Is AU not just a servant to the EU and every other Western? I mean, what do you make of all of this?
Well, neither AU or ECOWAS is irrelevant. For me, they are both or they are all relevant. The issue is that the member states or those who are representing member countries in this regional bloc or continental body, they are the ones who have failed their people in terms of representation. Remember, when you say ECOWAS, you are talking of economic
community of West African states. Yes.
You did not say political community.
Oh.
That's where they are getting it wrong. If you are trying to interfere in political affairs of another member nation, then it's a problem. That is where there was a disagreement with Niger, Mali, and others. Remember, the philosophy behind our creation is economic integration. So if you are going away from that economic integration of this community, then you're actually looking for something else. That is for that. Then for African Union, we have the African Free Continental Agreement.
Right. Yes.
That, okay, I think Nigeria have signed and others. But before you domesticate such law fully, you look at the pros and cons, the benefits it has to your own citizens and others. So like I said, we've not gotten it right as a nation in terms of power, electricity for instance, healthcare, and you want to fully implement. Nation states like South Africa, Egypt, Rwanda that has gotten it right in terms of power, you see that their products will flood Nigeria, for instance. And that goes against the same economic ECOWAS philosophy. Because one, we have agreed as a regional bloc or sub-regional bloc, ECOWAS, that we must enhance economic integration. Do you understand? So now when you now move products from Aba, Onitsha, Lagos or Kano to Ghana, so internally they say they increase tariff that local content. Before you consume what comes from Nigeria, you must first of all look at that of Ghana. Or when you have, because even across the member states, we don't even have free trading areas, non-tariff areas. For instance, like I'm even of this idea that maybe somewhere in Badagry or the Lagos Street Fair could be the regional hub where goods from all these member nations can come as a depot to offload. You buy, have your custom papers and what have you. Do you understand? So when you are now moving it from there to Sokoto or elsewhere, it shouldn't be seen as imported goods. Then you can regulate the quantity in terms of, let me say, fabrics that you move to a member nation at a particular point in time, so you don't kill their industry.
Right.
Do you understand? Right. But it's also against the same economic integration of a member state that most fabrics or finished products that enters the big brother of Africa, which is Nigeria, that has biggest population, comes from Asia, China, and what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so how do you expect other economic member
States.
to feel?
So
we have betrayed
yeah,
as a nation.
yeah. In one final swoop, what do you think would be the best way to integrate and consolidate as well as empower West Africa, such that we will have a reduction in food scarcity, importation, as well? We'll also have, employment, opportunities. We'll have less insecurity and all of that. In just one sentence, if you can.
We need to mentally dismantle the artificial border.
Okay.
The colonial masters created.
Oh, okay.
Because in Benin Republic, for instance, you have Yoruba communities. You have leaders, people in key governments who bears Yoruba
names.
The same thing up till Ghana. So we are one. So the demarcation that this Benin Republic, we are done by colonial invasion.
Right.
So until we see ourselves again as one, brothers and sisters, we cannot make headway.
All right. We wish we could continue with the conversation, but the producers and the head of the station, of course, they've come to give us a signal for another programming. But we want to say a big thank you to you, Doctor. I mean, you are Dr. Kingsley Uzoma. You are a security and public affairs analyst, chief consultant at Eagle Rescue and Alarm Systems Limited. We are looking forward to more conversations with you in the coming days.
Thank you.
Appreciate. Well, and of course, to you family members, would have loved to open the phone lines indeed, but time would not allow for us to do so because it's really tight up in here. But yeah, we promise that, subsequently, of course, we will indeed have that time to engage with you. But of course, you can leave your comments across social media platforms as you know it. We are hosting an online television there, so get onto the Facebook page wall and see for yourself that we are live and direct. Go underneath the comment section and let's see how we can make West Africa as well as Africa stronger and greater again. Do so on YouTube at Eagles FM Abuja. Be sure to subscribe as well. My name is Udwak Daniel.
And I am Omoefe Piso Semere. Well, the next hour promises to be more interesting. I'm sure that we'll have more engaging conversations with you, so please stay on the dial. Good morning.
Eagles 102.3.